So I'm not quite done in Cookie Land, but I thought I better stop and take a break and try to figure out something to eat for tonight. So what I've come up with, I looked in my refrigerator and I had gotten a rotisserie chicken, so I had some leftover rotisserie chicken. I had a whole head of cauliflower that needs to be used because I haven't used it yet. I did have some leftover rice. I had some left out of a bag of spinach. I usually buy one of those huge boxes of spinach, and this is what I'm down to. And then, of course, some onion. I always have garlic and onion, so that just goes without saying. And that's a nice pantry staple, actually. I always have the basics. I always try to have celery, fresh garlic, and fresh onion. Sometimes carrots, depends. But anyway, it's always good to have that in your refrigerator because you can just do anything when you have those basics. I do have some kind of pitiful leftover mushrooms also. So I'm going to do a soup. And it's kind of like my version of chicken and rice soup. Why not? So you're going to need a box of the chicken broth that we've talked about before. I use the low sodium Swanson. You can use fresh chicken broth, fresh homemade if you'd like. You can use vegetable broth, whatever works for you. If you don't have any of these items in your refrigerator, you can substitute. And the reason why I'm doing these videos is because I'm looking in my refrigerator. I use a lot of basic vegetables. I always have spinach. Well, I don't always, but anyway, I try to have broccoli, spinach, some basic vegetables, and then I kind of, I'm able to pull in those things into whatever I want to make. So if you don't have spinach, don't worry about it. You can leave it out. If you don't have cauliflower, you could use broccoli, or you could use cabbage. There's just that's kind of like the same kind of family. That broccoli, cauliflower, cabbage kind of gives you that same kind of feeling. So, and if you don't have celery, don't worry about any of this really, but you really do kind of need the onions and the garlic. So anyway, I've prepped my garlic. I don't know. Also, you know what I do? I wanted to tell you that I always have bowls handy. And what I do is when I chop my vegetables for whatever meal I'm making, I think about how long does it take this vegetable to cook? Like the celery, the onion, the mushrooms pretty much are the lowest cooking, the quick cooking. So I'm going to put those on a separate bowl. And then the cauliflower, I'm going to do in a separate bowl. The spinach I'll leave in the bag. I might do a rough chop on that. I haven't decided yet. Okay, so I've smashed my garlic cloves. I just take a big hit on them because I don't know about you all, but I am so tired of garlic. It's so hard to get that perfect cut, so I always end up just smashing it to get it so it's easier to cut and it doesn't roll all over the place. And then I just do a rough chop through it so I can get it, to a smallest place I need it to be. I've tried all the gadgets. I've tried a press. I also use the garlic in the tube, not the water, but it's like a fresh garlic in a tube, and you can get ginger that way. I think you can get a pesto that way, but I stopped. I think my daughter shames me when she's coming over and I cook with that because fresh garlic is everything. But anyway, today I'm using fresh garlic. You can use whatever. Don't be shamed. Okay. So I've got it chopped up nice and small. All right. And of course, like I've said before, I'm going to keep that on the side of the chopping board because it burns very quickly. I don't usually add it till later. All right, so then I'm going to do a quick chop on these mushrooms. If you don't like mushrooms, leave it out. It's not the end of the world. I do like them, and I like them in this soup because they're different. I'll show you how we're going to do them. probably just slicing is all I'm going to do, slicing across. And I've cleaned them up. I've got all the dirt on the outside off. I just take like a damp rag and wipe them off. All right, so rough chopping the mushrooms. All right, so those are going to go in a bowl. Get them out of the way. And then the celery, I take off the very ends. Any kind of brown or dead looking stuff. Again, I try to do them fairly small. The celery in this dish is mostly for flavor. When I do stir fry dishes, I will do larger pieces because I like that crunch, but in a soup, I tend to chop it smaller because I only want the essence of it. I don't want to bite into a big crunch, a big piece of celery in my soup. So anyway, I'm going to chop these pretty small. Just go across. So I've taken the stalk and I've slit it down maybe 1 or 2 times, and then I'm just going to go across with it. Usually soups, you start off, I do have a few carrots, and I was going to use a few carrots. You can do carrots. I just wasn't in the mood, so I put it back in the refrigerator. It's about your mood, I didn't want to cut them. At this point in the day, I mean, if you all have full-time jobs like I do, I don't always want to do all the prep work. And I think that's why I'm doing these videos. It's so difficult to get to eat healthy and fresh foods for working people. And I sympathize with everyone. I don't work outside the home, but boy, my job sure is full-time. And believe me, I get real tired of having to worry about what I'm going to cook also. So this has helped me. These videos are helping me also to make good choices. So anyway, I'm going to get the celery. I'm going to put them in a separate bowl. The mushrooms are going to leave by themselves because those are little funky things to cook. So, all right. And then I probably don't need to do all this prep with you. I think I'm going to do all of this onion. So let's call it a medium to small onion, and then the rest I'm going to save for another time. So I'm going to cut this onion just like I did the celery, small pieces. I've got my broccoli and I've got my mushrooms. And I'm going to stop there, prep the rest of this. I'll be cutting up the cauliflower into the bite-sized pieces. And I'll probably chop the chicken or tear it in bite-sized pieces. And then I'll come back and we'll put it all together. Okay, so we've prepped the onion, the garlic, the mushrooms, and the celery. And I decided to come back because I don't know how many of you need to see some of the prep. I thought, I better show you some of what I'm doing. Because I don't always give you a lot of measurements because it's like personal preference and what you have, and I'm trying to get you to kind of go with it and feel that. So I'm always cooking for 2 of us, and usually there's leftovers, sometimes not. So when I do my amounts, that's what it's geared for. Let's say 2 to 4 people. You can double this, or you can, look at what I'm doing and just do a little bit more of everything. Even the chicken broth, if you want a larger pot, you do 2 of these, and try to do more of everything. But anyway, it's all geared on 2 people. Now I took that whole head of cauliflower. I didn't use that much. I used probably I made little florets here, and I did probably 3 or 4 of those and cut them into little tiny pieces. So I have a good 3/4 of a cauliflower left to be used at another time, I guess. Okay, so that's what that is. These are all small bite size. I'm into that bite size. So the next thing I'm going to do is, this is gosh, I'm gonna say, what, 6 ounces of spinach. You know, when they have those 10-ounce bags and they have like a pound box. So this is probably less than the 10-ounce bag. So basically, I kind of scrunch it in my hand. I'm gonna just do a rough chop across it. Watch your fingers. Kind of pull back on it, and I just, you know, gather it all together, kind of twist a little bit, and just kind of do a rough chop on this. I think it goes farther in soup. All right, so that's that. You can see it's kind of just rough chopped. This is fresh spinach. I think this is baby spinach. It doesn't have to be. It can be any spinach you want. I also wanted to comment that I do use fresh vegetables. I've never been a frozen vegetable person. My brother pretty much cooks with all frozen vegetables, and he's a really good cook. I just never was geared for frozen vegetables. If you use frozen vegetables, then you don't have any prep. Grab a frozen cauliflower, a bag of it out of the freezer. You know, the spinach, I don't suggest frozen. There's certain things I can't even imagine. But I guess celery and onion you don't do frozen. But anyway, if you do, you can do partially frozen vegetables with these things that I do as well. So feel free to do that. Okay, I'm gonna put the spinach and the cauliflower aside, and then I'm gonna show you the chicken. I'm gonna say, this is probably, you can see, it's probably, I'm gonna say a 4-ounce chicken breast size. So there is a little dark meat mixed in. Again, remember it's the leftover rotisserie chicken. So I'm going to, I've kind of, pulled it apart. And so into shreds or whatever the pieces are. And I'm gonna kind of do another rough chop. And I do wanna make it smaller. If you wanna tear it into bite-sized pieces, you can do that. This just seems easier for me. There's no rules here, folks. You find your own way. I'm just hoping to give you ideas. All right, so this looks like, what, a cup and a half? About a cup and a half of chicken. Again, you could double that if you wanted for 6 people. So anyway, there's that. So we've got everything prepped, and I'm gonna move over to the stove and I'll be back. Okay, so now we're gonna start cooking the soup. And like any soup, I always start out with olive oil, onion, the basics. And I saute them first, and that's what brings out the flavor. So basically, I'm going to do a little olive oil. I don't know. Geez, maybe a tablespoon. And I'm going to do 2 tablespoons of butter. There's reasons for the butter. If you don't want to use butter, use more olive oil. If you don't want olive oil, use a neutral oil of your choice. I just like olive oil in this one because I like the flavor of it. I don't always use it. All right, so I'm going to start by melting that butter in the olive oil. Put that on high so it gets going fairly quick. Okay. Now, when you do a soup, you always start with the vegetables that take the longest. But in this case, I'm going to start with the celery and the onion because I want to infuse that flavor into the fat. I also am going to use some dried thyme. If you don't like thyme, you don't have to use it. You can use another spice that you like. I'm going to put about, just hardly any. I'm going to say a half a teaspoon of dried thyme in with the oil. And it kind of brings out the flavor. I don't want a lot of it. I just want to add a little essence of it. All right, so this is all kind of melting together. I am going to turn it down to medium. So then I'm going to add my onion and my celery. If you have carrots at this point, you put the carrots in. Carrots would be very nice in this dish. I just didn't want to prep them. So no carrots for me, but you can do carrots. So once again, kind of similar to the leek potato soup, you're going to stir that around till it's soft, translucent, a little tender. And this is where the flavor comes in. You want to infuse flavor into that soup, and it all starts in the oil, the butter, and the beginnings. There's the celery, the onion, the carrot in most cases. All right, so I'm on medium. I don't want to brown this at all. And I'm softening it. And I'm stirring it. And it's doing nicely. You can see bits of thyme kind of, maybe you can't on the camera, but anyway, you can see bits of thyme coating the vegetables. I think this is kind of a piece of the skin. I want to get rid of that onion. All right, turn the heat up a little bit. All right, so this is softening. Oh yeah, smell that wonderful smell of thyme in there. Again, if you don't like thyme, use something you like. You can use sage, you can use, I don't even know I don't know, just basic seasonings. If you want to do Italian seasoning, you can. Anyway, do the thyme. Okay, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add the mushrooms because I want those to have some flavor too. And mushrooms are kind of funky. They don't cook well with other things. So normally I cook mushrooms separate to give them kind of a seared look, a brown look. But because it's in soup, it doesn't matter. So, okay, I just wanted them to be coated a little bit in that butter and seasoning. All right, and that's enough of that. So the next thing I do is I add the garlic, because I'm going to be almost done with my cooking. And once I add my broth, then it's going to be, a different process. So right now, the garlic is my last thing that I'm actually going to cook with this beginning, sauteing them all together. All right. Again, the flavors are wrapping around all these wonderful things. All right, so that's how simple that is. Now I'm going to add my chicken broth and pour it right in there. Now you can see that I didn't saute very long. I just wanted to get those vegetables started. I wanted them to have that butter and oil and just start their cooking. So now you add your broth. All right. If you're going to have more people, then you do 2 broths. This is good for 2 people. All right, the next thing is the cauliflower. Now, you can use, I have to look and see, I might not want all that cauliflower in there, but I do love it. Yeah, I think I'm going to do it all. Why not? All right, so then the cauliflower. Now, the cauliflower needs to cook. So I didn't want to saute it because there's no need. So now I'm going to heat this up, bring it to a soft boil, a simmer, and let that cauliflower cook in that broth with the thyme, the butter, and the oil. And that won't take very long. Now, because the chicken is cooked, that is the very last thing we put in. And the rice is also cooked. And the spinach, I only want to wilt the spinach, so I'm not going to put that till the end either. But we're getting there, folks. One thing I did want to talk to you about is grated cheese. You know how they have those jars? I don't even know if they're in the refrigerated section. And they say grated cheese. Well, that's like sawdust. If you're going to get cheese, get real cheese. This brand is popular. You can find it over in the cheese section. And this happens to be a mixture of Parmesan, Fontina, Asiago, and Provolone. And this is just going to be a garnish for the top. Once I ladle it out, I'm going to put a little cheese on there. A grated Italian cheese of some kind, sometimes just Parmesan, sometimes Romano. But don't use those round cylinders. They're called grated cheese because they're not even cheese, and they certainly aren't real Parmesan. So try to find something in the cheese section. Pre-grated if you want. I'm not going to be fussy about it. But real cheese at the end is going to make all the difference in the world. Okay, I'll come back when the cauliflower is cooked for the next step. Okay, so this has boiled for about 5 minutes. Cauliflower is tender because it's bite size. And I'm going to add the rice at this point. Now the rice will do several things. It's going to let some starch off, so it's kind of thicken this a little bit, kind of like the potatoes did for the potato leek soup. I think I'm going to use my hands. I'm going to say about a cup of rice, give or take, depending on how you like it. All right, so I've still got the heat on. I've added the rice. Okay, you can kind of see it. All those goodies in there. All right. Once I want to explain that this is not a lot of cooking involved. That's why you have to rely on a good base, a good chicken broth that you like. I personally don't use bouillon. I find that none of them are not salty enough. There was a really good restaurant quality one when I had the restaurant that I could use that was actually concentrated chicken broth and a bouillon and had very little salt in it. But I find most bouillon is too salty. At least this chicken broth, because it's reduced salt, I feel like it's a great way to start or to do unless you're going to make your own, which is of course even better. Okay, so the rice is doing its thing. Remember, it's already cooked, so it's letting off that starch and it's kind of thickening it. At this point, I'm going to add the chicken. Now, we haven't done any salt or pepper, so I am going to add salt and pepper. I think I'm going to get a spoon and try it. I generally find I do need a little salt because I am using reduced salt. Okay, so let's see what we have here. Yep, it needs a little salt. So I'm going to add the salt at this time. About a half a teaspoon to a teaspoon, whatever your desire is. And then I like fresh cracked pepper. You can use regular table pepper if you want. Put that in as you like it. Whoops. Okay, stir that in. Now it's kind of thick and nice. I don't like a real brothy soup. I like substance to it. Now, at this point, if you need to add more chicken broth, you could if you want more brothy. But I'm pretty much done. I think it's good. I'm going to add the spinach. All I'm going to do is wilt it in there. I'm not looking to long-term cook this. Spinach should not be cooked, only wilted. It's tender as can be, and it's just there to add color, texture, and wonderful flavor. If you don't like spinach, leave it out. You could use Swiss chard. You could use escarole. You could use kale. I love tender sweet kale. Could add kale in there. Whatever your preference, any kind of green that you like. Okay, now believe it or not, this soup is done. Now, I'm going to turn it off. It can sit. You can see how it has this creamy consistency because of the rice. And it's very, very thick. If you might want to add more chicken broth, I'm okay with it. I'm going to get a bowl so you can see what it looks like dished out. And I'm going to use the big bowl so you can see it. Okay, so then I take the beautiful chunks, add a little broth to it. This is hearty. It's not your typical brothy. So there's that. At this point, I'm going to add a little cheese for the top for a garnish. And that's it. Chicken and rice elevated. Chicken and rice soup elevated. Enjoy.